Um, one sec. All right, Rashawn, you ready? I'll start. The regular meeting of the Leonia Board of Education was called to order Tuesday, January 19th, 2021 at 7:32 p.m. Via Zoom webinar. Adequate notice of tonight's meeting in accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act has been provided through the following methods: distribution of notice to the record, posting of notice at the Annecy Scott Elementary School, Leonia Middle School, Leonia High School, Community Bulletin Board, Public Library, Leonia Borough Hall, and the school district's beautifully new revamped website. If you go check out the Board of Education website, it's looking good. It's not completed yet, but it's looking very good. I'll pat myself on the back. It took a long time. All right, let me just get the flag ready here. If everyone could please rise for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. And on that note, congratulations, I suppose, to the president-elect, or who will be president soon. So pledge our allegiance. Yeah, noon tomorrow. Okay. Sean, if you could do the call to order, please. Or, sorry, the roll call, please.
Absolutely. Mrs. Albanese.
Present.
Mrs. De Jesus.
Present.
Mr. Lee.
Here.
Mrs. Melvin.
Here.
Mr. Park.
He's joining right now.
Here.
Mr. Phelan.
Present.
Mrs. Rackall.
Here.
Mr. Robbins.
Present.
Mrs. Thompson.
Present.
Mrs. Wiles.
She's
No,
not going to be
here,
here.
at least at this point.
Christina, I believe it's your first meeting. Is that correct with our board? So I just wanted to say welcome. Christina is going to be our Edgewater liaison. So welcome. Feel free to introduce yourself, I suppose.
Christina Rackow. Let me see. I've been on the school board for Edgewater since 2006. I have attended many Leonia board meetings, but from the audience, and not in a while, admittedly. We've been busy on the home front, but I'm really pleased to have a chance to serve in this role, taking Sandy Klein's place as she's stepping up to our board presidency. And I've worked with Dr. Bertolini many times before, and I'm really looking forward to working with everybody else. So thank you very much, Bryce.
Bryce, just one more. I'd like to obviously welcome Christina. I know Christina for, I guess, decades, more than a few years. And the one thing I can always say about Christina is that she's very supportive of the school system and is, again, looking out for the students and for our staff. So we're very happy that Christina's going to join us. Not that we didn't like Sandy, but we certainly like Christina also.
Agrees. Second.
No one gets Sandy mad at me.
No, and congratulations to Sandy for becoming the board president of Edgewater. Okay. So now we will move on to our first order of business, and that's the presentation of the 2019-2020 audit results. So without further ado, Mr. Bliss, do you need to share your screen, or?
Can you see me?
Yeah, we can see you. Do you have a presentation that you'd like to share, or?
Well, we have something, Rashawn, I sent the summary of the fund balance and then the audit reports that you all should have a copy of.
Okay, yeah, so feel free to see.
I don't know if Bryce, if you want to maybe share that from your screen, just so the public maybe can see the actual figures on the financials as Jeff goes through that. That might be helpful for them to be able to see those numbers.
Yeah, sure. I'm just gonna have to pull it up. Give me one. I don't have the email open at the moment. Rashawn, by any chance, do you have it in front? I'm sorry, I don't have it in front of me. It might take me a second to pull it up.
Sure, I'll pull it up on the drive.
All right, apologies. But that being said, the board members do have it, I believe, so everyone should have it. So Mr. Bliss, please feel free
Okay,
to.
I'll get started.
Yep.
So each board member should have received 2 reports. The comprehensive annual financial report, which is the larger clear cover book, and then there's a smaller auditor's management report for the 2019-20 school year. Our job, or one of our charges as the auditors, to give an opinion on the district's financial statements. And our opinion on the financial statements are unmodified, meaning that the financial statements are fairly stated, they're prepared in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles, and there were no scope limitations in performing the audit. A unmodified opinion is a clean opinion, and it's absolute must in any audit report that is filed. So for the 1920 year, I'm happy to report that the opinion is unmodified. In addition to our opinion on the financial statements, we have to report on your compliance with government auditing standards over financial reporting, as well as internal controls over financial reporting, and on single audit compliance and financial reporting. We're going to go over the findings later in the smaller report, but the first thing I'd like to do is go over the financial numbers, and that was the schedule that I set with Rashawn. But for the board members, on page 75 of the audit report, the CAFR, is the summary of the general fund balance for the year ending June 30th of 2020.
And board members, this document was also, this was actually added in the board packet. So you should have it. It's literally the one pager with the financial summary.
So in the bigger report, which is the comprehensive annual financial report, one of the most important exhibits to a board member that you really want to review is called the Exhibit C1. Starts on page 70, goes through page 75, and it's the budgetary comparison schedule of the general fund. And the district has many funds, but probably the most important and prominent fund is the general fund, and that's where probably 98% of the district's revenues and expenses are accounted for in. And at the end of page 75 is a summary of fund balance. And fund balance is important to a board member, because when you start the development of the 21-22 budget, one of the questions you're going to want to ask, and one of the things you want to know, is how much money, how much fund balance do we have on hand to fund expenses of the 21-22 budget. So I'm going to go through on page 75 the types of fund balance you have and what they're for and what you can do with them. So not all fund balance is available to the board as they see fit to use. Some of the money has been set aside in restricted accounts where the board actually did a resolution and put money aside for a specific purpose. And then other money is restricted by state regulation. And then there's what they call the unassigned fund balance, which is the monies that are available for the board to use in future expenses. The first item of fund balance on page 75 is in the restricted category. And restricted means it's been set aside for a specific purpose and can only be used for that purpose. The first item is capital reserve, $600,907. And it represents the capital reserve that the district by resolution has put aside and has yet to earmark for any capital project. So if a capital project comes up in the future and the district needs funds to fund that project, they can use these monies in this reserve, a capital reserve of $600,907. You also have capital reserve designated for subsequent year expenditures of $275. And what those funds represent is capital reserve monies that you're currently using in your 2021 budget to finance a project in that budget. If that project only comes in less than the 275, whatever money remains will go back into the $600,000 account. Capital reserve can only be used for capital projects in the long-range facility plan. The board cannot use these funds for teacher salaries, health benefits, tuition costs, or any other type of operating costs. Strictly capital projects, they have to be eligible school facility projects that are in the district's long-range facility plan. Then we have maintenance reserve. The first item of maintenance reserve is $350,000, and it represents the monies the district put aside by resolution for projects to keep the facilities in their current working order. Maintenance projects are projects not to add life or value to the assets, but to keep them in their current condition. You cannot use maintenance reserve for capital, and you cannot use maintenance reserve for other type of operating costs. So at the end of June 30th of 2020, the district has $350,000 of maintenance reserve monies it has not earmarked for any project. So going forward, if a maintenance project comes up during the year, or you want to budget a maintenance project in the 21-22 budget, the district has $350,000 available to fund those maintenance projects. In addition to the $350,000, you had $100,000 at the end of the year of maintenance reserve, which you're currently using in your 2021 budget. And again, if we do not spend that $100,000 for maintenance costs, that excess that we don't spend will go back into the $350,000. Both these reserves, the capital reserve and maintenance reserve, again, are strictly for the purpose for which the district put those monies aside. For the 2019-20 year, the capital reserve started the year at $805,000. You used about $228,000 to fund the project. At the end of the year in June, we transferred almost $299,000 in the reserve, and we ended the year with a little over $875,000, of which $275,000 you're putting into the 2021 budget. As far as the maintenance reserve, you started with $100,000, you transferred in $350,000, you have $450,000 in total, $100,000 you're using again in 2021. The next item, excess surplus. In New Jersey, as the board members know, you can only have so much of what they call unassigned surplus. Anything over surplus reserve. When we ended the year, June 30th of 20, we closed the books, transferred the money into the reserve accounts. We had $640,000 of excess surplus that was over the maximum 2% we're allowed to maintain in unassigned. This $640,000 must be used by regulation to fund expenses in the 21-22 budget. So when you start the 21-22 budget, you have set aside $640,000 of surplus to fund expenses in the 21-22 budget. That next line, excess surplus designated for subsequent year expenditures of $641,276, represents the excess surplus from June 30th of 19, a year ago, that the district is using in the 2021 budget to fund expenses in that budget. And you can see we had 641 at the end of 19 that we're using in 2021, and the district's in the same spot with 640,000 at the end of June 30th, 20 for the 21-22 budget. So when you start the 21-22 budget process, you have the same amount of excess surplus starting that budget process, which puts you in a good position. If the 640 was zero, you would have what basically they call is a structural imbalance in the budget, because you'd have to make up 641,000 of revenue to balance that budget, or cuts to the budget expenses. So the 640 in excess surplus puts you in a good position. In addition to that, we have assigned what they call year-end encumbrances of $35,250. It represents commitments the district made at the end of the year for services or goods where the goods or services have not been received or rendered. We don't owe anyone money, but we committed that money for those purchases, and when those purchases are completed, meaning the goods are received or the services are rendered, we will liquidate those purchase orders and expend those funds. So in all realities, those funds are no longer available going forward to fund expenses. That leaves us with unassigned fund balance of $707,530. This is your true unassigned surplus. These are the monies that are available going forward to fund future budgetary expenses. So when you start the 21-22 budget process, you have 640 that you have to use as surplus. If you need additional funds, you draw it off the 707,530. Overall, I would say the district financially is in good, sound condition. You have reserves set aside in both capital and maintenance. You're starting in a good position with the excess surplus, basically even with the year before, and you have the maximum you're allowed to have an unassigned fund balance. So I would say you ended the year in a very good spot financially. If there's no questions, I'll go to the management report and go through the findings. Nobody has questions?
I just have one question.
Yes.
So regarding the capital reserve, as I recall from the previous year's audit, one of the concerns was that the reserve fund was pretty depleted, as I believe it was the capital reserve fund. I'm just curious, what is the healthy range that a school district of our size should have?
It's hard to say because it's all about what your needs are.
We have a lot of needs.
And it deals with the age of your buildings. There is a calculation, and the maximum you're allowed to put there is 60% of what's in your long-range facility plan, which is probably, my guess is at the 60% has got to be well over $2 to $3 million of projects in that long-range facility plan. That's the max you're allowed to have. I would say, if you keep somewhere around $1 million that's available to get you through a year, I think that's more than sufficient for a district your size. I don't think your facilities are that old that the maximum amount would be required for Leonia.
Okay,
I think you're in good shape. Obviously, you always want to build them up, but it all depends on what your future plans are with capital projects.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Okay, if there's no other comments, I'm going to go to the management report, which is the smaller of the two reports, and I don't know if it's on page 16 is a summary of recommendations. And I'll go through them. So overall, we had 12 findings in the report. 2 of which are repeats from the year before, 2 which are considered significant deficiencies in internal controls. And those things we absolutely must address and resolve because they were, as they're identified as significant deficiencies, and I will point them out to you. And I'm going to just go through them on page 16. The first ones dealt with the whole purchasing and accounts payable process. In doing the audit, we examine your expenses, we examine your payments. There were numerous purchase orders and their related supporting documentation for payments you made to vendors that they could not find the purchase orders and the related supporting documentation. That is a significant deficiency. There has to be an orderly manner in which these documents are filed and readily available, not only for audit, but to board members or anyone who requests to see them. So our recommendation there is purchase orders and supporting documentation for vendor payments be maintained on file in an orderly manner and be available for audit. Again, it's a significant deficiency. Absolutely have to resolve that. You got to resolve all of them, but that one particularly. The next item deals with payments that were made electronically. The state of New Jersey is allowing government entities to pay their bills through what they call electronic fund transfers. The district is paying its health benefits, some utility bills, food services, postage, internet services, debt service, pension bills through electronic fund transfers. And that's the way the world's going. The check is becoming obsolete. However, 2 things. One is those payments that were made electronically were never put on a bill list for review by the board and ultimate approval. Every claim, basically every claim that is paid by the district must be approved by the board on the bill list. In addition, if you are going to do electronic fund transfers, you have to adopt formal policies and procedures. You can't just do it without a formal policy and procedure, because the bottom line is you still have to follow all the processes that you normally do, except at the very end, you just don't write a check. You transfer the money to the vendor for payment, and you have to control that process. A vendor can't come in and take the money out of your account to automatically pay themselves. You have to initiate the process. So our recommendation there is that payments to vendors made by electronic fund transfers be included on the bills list submitted to the board for their approval as required by statute. In addition, the district adopt the formal policies and procedures for the electronic payment of claims. Item 3, as part of the audit, we always do a sample of your health benefit bills, the individuals on the bills, compare them to the payroll records to see if these people are employees and they're eligible for benefits. On the dental bills, we saw 4 former employees that you were paying for that should be removed from the bills. Nothing in health benefits, but on dental benefits. And we got to put a process in place that those bills are reviewed monthly and verified that all the employees are eligible for coverage. So the recommendation is the district's dental bills, benefit bills be reviewed on a monthly basis to ensure only active eligible employees with the districts are receiving benefits. Item 4 deals with an IRS information form, 1095C filing. It's an informational form about employees' health coverage. You all get one from your employer. The district is, because you're in the state health benefit plan, the district is required to fill those forms out. The forms were given to the employees. However, the form that is supposed to be filed with the IRS was not filed on time. And unfortunately, the district was hit with a penalty of around $26,000. We have filed with the approval of the administration. We have filed a claim with the IRS to abate that penalty. They're still reviewing it, so hopefully that gets abated. So the recommendation there is that the district remit the IRS information form 1095C filing in a timely manner. Item 5 deals with the budget. The internal records of the district, the original budget in the internal records of the district, the budget report, did not agree to the budget the district actually adopted. The budget in the district's accounting system was $230,000 less than what you adopted. So if you looked at that budget, those lines, there were lines that didn't agree to what you guys approved and adopted. And then there were some things added into the modified budget that should not have been. So therefore, obviously, the business office has to verify that the original budget is inputted correctly and that the modified budget is proven out and it all works to the audit reports and to the adopted budget. So our recommendation is that internal control procedures be reviewed and revised to ensure the original budget as adopted is properly reflected in the district's budget appropriation report. That's your internal records. In addition, the district reconciled the modified budget to the encumbrances reported in the prior year audit. Very simple thing, but it's got to be done. Item 6 is an accounting technical issue. The state of New Jersey, you don't really receive all your state aid in cash. What they do is they pay certain bills for you, which basically is the Bergen County Special Service School District and certain tuitions to state facilities and the SDA assessment for SDA, previous SDA grants. That's called a debit credit memo. You don't make the payment to these entities, they make them for you. So you got to put in your book, in the books of the district, you have to record that as if you received the state aid and as if you made the payment. It's called a debit credit memo. Those were not made in the district books for the 1920 year. So our recommendation there is that procedures be reviewed and revised to ensure all debit credit memo transactions are properly reflected in the district accounting records. The district is notified in September, October of what the numbers are. They have to be booked right then and there. There's no reason to wait. Travel expenses, this kind of falls in with number 1, where we didn't have supporting documentation. Travel reimbursement expenses, the supporting documentation for them in certain instances was not available, as well as when employees go to conferences and workshops, they're required to fill out a purpose and relevancy form, basically explaining why that conference or workshop was advantageous for their position with the district. That's another accountability regulation with the state. And because we couldn't find the supporting documentation, this came up when we audited those travel expenses. So our recommendation there is that greater care be exercised over travel expenses to ensure post-travel purpose and relevancy reports and supporting documentations are attached to the purchase order. Kind of fits in with number 1. 8 has a star next to it. That means it's a repeat recommendation. And it deals with the final expenditure reports for your ESEA and your IDA grant programs. The reports that were filed for the year end were overstated, and they didn't agree to the district records. This is a repeat from last year, so we definitely have to clean this up and get it straightened out, because you can't have repeat recommendations. It's not a good thing. So recommendation 8 is final expenditure reports for the federal ESEA and IDA grant programs be reconciled to and be in agreement with the district's accounting records prior to their submission. Number 9 deals with a report that has to be filed with the state of New Jersey to reimburse them for the TPAF, that's the TPF pension, Social Security, and pension that they pay for the district for employees charged to federally funded programs. So the state of New Jersey pays all the pension contributions for teachers and pays all the board's share of Social Security contributions for your teachers. When you charge a teacher's salary to a federally funded program, the state wants that money back, that 7.65% of FICA, and it's probably somewhere around 13, 14, 50% for pension. They want that money back because they're saying you're charged that to the federal government. So that report was not filed timely, was not submitted. I'm sure that Sean has filed it by now, but it's got to be done by the due date and can't wait till 6 months after the fact. Under school purchasing, we had a recommendation. This is also considered a significant deficiency. New Jersey has a tremendous amount of regulations regarding purchasing, bid requirements, advertising requirements, approvals by the board for certain contracts. In doing the audit of the contracts and compliance with the public contracts law, as well as with state procurement guidelines, there were several vendors that were paid over the bid threshold, which, number one, were not approved by the board. And there's no evidence that they were bid or that they were state contracts or cooperative purchasing agreement vendors. In addition, there were a couple of vendors where you were required to get quotes. There were no quotes attached to the purchase orders. And then there are business certification, business registration certification, and political contribution disclosure forms that when you pay a vendor or award a contract to a vendor over 17.5, you have to get those documents. The business registration certificates, actually anything over 6,000, 17.5 for the political disclosure. You have to get those documents before you make those payments. So our recommendation is that internal control procedures over purchasing be reviewed and revised to ensure all contracts, awards, and purchases which exceed the bid and quote threshold are made in accordance with the requirements of the public school contracts law and state procurement guidelines. And again, this was also a significant deficiency. Need to address this and clean that up as well. Next, page 17, you're going to see under application for state school aid for the new board members, the application for state school aid, which is referred to as the ASSA, is a census of the student population on October 15th of the school year. That's the basis for which the district gets state aid and how certain federal funds are allocated to the district. We're required to audit that census data. In reviewing that census data, there was work papers that didn't agree to what was reported to the state, the census work papers, as well as documentation to support what was on the work papers didn't agree to what was on the work papers, making those people eligible. So our recommendation there is to recommend that procedures over the preparation of the application for state school aid be reviewed and enhanced to ensure amounts reported agree with district work papers and supporting documentation. That was a repeat also, was not corrected. And then for pupil transportation, there is another census report. It's called the DRTRS, which is a census of students you transport. And again, we are required to audit that report. And there were some differences. Actually, there were some people reported as receiving transportation, which we could not verify to supporting documentation that they were being transported. Therefore, the recommendation is that documentation be retained and made available for audit to support students reported on the district's DRTRS report. Obviously, this is not a good report. Last year, we only had 4 recommendations. You did have some turnover, obviously, during the years, I know in purchasing and in the BA position. Obviously, we got to clean this stuff up and put in a corrective action plan and get it resolved, specifically the repeats as well as the significant deficiencies. If there's any comments, questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Jeff, I just had a quick question, actually, if you don't mind, about
Yes,
my previous question. I apologize to go back to that.
sure.
I was just curious, the 60% you talked about, is that year by year, or can we save for the plan if we have like projects that are a few years, that we know are going to be a few years out?
It's the total, I think it's a 5-year plan.
Okay.
It's the total of all the projects in the 5-year plan.
Okay.
So you add them up and you take 60%, and that's the max you're allowed to retain in capital reserve.
Gotcha. Thank you very much.
You're welcome. That's my report.
Okay.
Again, be more than happy to answer questions.
Yep. Kim, yep.
I had a question. You mentioned that we might have a penalty of $26,000, and you filed a claim to abate the penalty. Is that right?
Yes.
What if they were to deny that? Where would that money have to come from?
Has to come out of your budget. Probably somewhere in judgments against school district. There's a general administration line. It could come out of there, or it could come out of, well, that's where it would come out of. Have to come out of general admin penalties.
And just so everyone knows, right after this, our business administrator, Rashawn's going to give his corrective action plan presentation to the public, starting very early to get into the state. Okay, seeing more. Yeah,
I
Dan.
have a follow-up question to Kim's question,
Yeah.
if I can. Just Jeff, I'm not sure if you know the answer to this, but do you know what the likelihood is of that decision being reversed based on what we've provided them now?
Well, the letter they sent us was a proposed penalty. So they didn't say this is definite. The likelihood is you probably got a 50-50 chance. The issue is that it goes back a little further than, it goes back before COVID. If it was during the COVID pandemic, it would probably have been abated already. We're hoping that they will abate it. I think you got a 50-50 chance, but that's probably the best.
Thank you. And Bryce, I have other comments, but I'd like to hear from Rashawn before, to hear what we're doing to correct these before I get into any other comments.
No, that's perfectly fine. Seeing no other questions, Mr. Bliss, thank you very much for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
We'll
Good night, everyone.
We'll see you again next year.
Thank you.
Yes.
Good night. Thanks, Jeff.
Bye. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Before we get into the presentation by Rashawn, I just want everyone to understand, members of the public and members of the board, the fiscal report and the audit that you just heard was undoubtedly disappointing, but I want to be clear, it's a look back. Our financial books close on June 30th. So Rashawn and Xanthi both came in July. So we've cleaned a lot of house in the central office, and I, for one, am confident from what I know now and what you're all about to hear in the corrective action plan that Rashawn's going to present, that a lot of the things that he mentioned, that Mr. Bliss mentioned, either have been cleaned up or there's plans to clean them up right away. I also want to say, in the past, our business office has, our BA has not always provided the public or the board this quickly with a corrective action plan or anything like it. So I want to compliment Rashawn on not only just taking such swift action, but really taking this report and turning this district, this report around for next year. It's disappointing what happened in the past, but I'm glad to see there's accountability and there's new members to guide this district. So Rashawn, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Do you want me to just share the screen? You can tell me when to go to the next slide, or do you have it already? Or I have it already set up, unless you do.
Yeah, I'm ready to go. I can share my screen.
All right. I'm gonna make you the host. Okay. So, all right, Rashawn, you should be able to share your screen for us.
Got it. Okay. All right. Can you all give me a thumbs up, board members, if you can actually see my presentation right now? All right. Awesome. Great. So again, we just heard from our the partner from our auditing firm, Lurch, Vinci and Higgins, Jeff Bliss, who gave us a one-year look back on the financial activities for the district. And at this time, I will be presenting the a proposed corrective action plan that I hope that this evening the board will approve and allow me to execute in efforts to resolve the deficiencies and material weaknesses that were identified in the 2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Review for the school district. So the CAFR, what is the CAFR? The CAFR, again, is our Comprehensive Annual Financial Review. The CAFR is a set of financial statements for a state, municipality, or other governmental entity that complies with the accounting requirements established by the Government to Accounting Standards Board. And this is something that must be audited by an independent auditor using generally accepted accounting principles, which we heard from our auditor earlier. So the scope of our audit, the CAFR, it covered the financial transactions of the board secretary, school business administrator, and treasurer of school monies, the activities of the Leonia Board of Education, and the records of the various funds under the auspices of the Leonia Board of Education. The audit provided a one-year look back on the district's financial activities and the results of those activities. We also heard from our auditor that in the summary of findings, there were approximately 12 auditor recommendations, and 2 of those recommendations were repeat findings from the prior year's CAFR. We also heard that there were some material weaknesses and significant deficiencies that must be addressed. I want to make it clear that the auditor's recommendations should be, and they will be, incorporated into this corrective action plan, as they will be used to improve the district performance as it relates to financial activities. As a school district, I would say it would be very unwise of our administration, and particularly of my office, if we did not follow the recommendations that we received from our auditors and utilize those as guide points with the implementation and development of this corrective action plan. Also, within the summary of findings, again, what was identified was weak internal controls, and that was specifically in the areas of purchasing, say, more critical areas of our organization. It was also identified in the finding that there were a lack of operating procedures, specifically in these areas where it pertained to our state and federal reporting, in the area of grants management, in the ASSA reporting procedures, and also with the school district's purchasing programs. The corrective action plan that I will walk us through will be built on five tenets. And these are things that I've come to learn during my tenure here at the school business administrator, and I believe are very important and significant pillars that would allow us to transform the school business office and our operations. This was not mentioned in the audit recommendations, but something that was identified very early in my tenure was the need to build staff capacity, particularly in our accounts payable department and in the area of purchasing, school purchasing programs. We also believe that there needs to be a review and update of existing policies. I think the district has been doing a good job of reviewing policies, making any updates based on recommendations that we receive from Strauss Esme, who manages the district's existing policies. However, I think there may be some opportunities to further provide updates and again to review the existing policies that we have in place. There's a great need to strengthen internal controls. We can only be as strong as the policies and the operating procedures that we have in place. And it's not enough to just have, policies that are available for people to view on the website. There also those policies also have to be upheld by the administration. They have to be respected by the staff members, and they have to be supported by strong internal controls and operating procedures. The development of such operating procedures will take place, and this will be an ongoing process. It will be something that we would like to embed into the culture of our organization. And the last piece is about driving collaboration. Although all the items we heard about this evening fall under the scope of financial activities, every member of our organization plays a role when it comes to our ability to uphold the administrative code, statute, public contract laws, etc. Everyone has a role to play in the process. And as I build out this corrective action plan, it's going to be extremely important that I drive collaboration with my peers and various stakeholders in order for us to be successful. Now, moving into the summary of findings and some details from the audit manager's report, I'll now walk through each finding and share with you my proposed corrective action. The first finding, which falls under the examination of claims, the auditors indicated that they were not provided with purchase orders and supporting invoices or other documentation for numerous payments that were made during the fiscal year. This was something that I was able to realize early off in my tenure coming into the district. And my staff and I have already moved forward with correcting this particular deficiency. And we've implemented an automated workflow for the issuance of all purchase orders and the receipt of the supporting documentation such as invoices and receiving verification. As a school business administrator, I also review the supporting documentation for all warrants made against the district prior to submitting the bills list for board approval. The automated workflow, my team and I utilize a platform which is known as DocuSign, and we upload all of the purchase orders once they have been approved. We upload them into DocuSign. We then send the purchase order / voucher to the vendor, who will provide their digital signature and process the order. Once they provide their digital signature and process the order, they must attach the invoice for the goods or services directly into the DocuSign platform. Once the vendor has completed their portion of their required steps, that purchase order is then routed to the employee within the school district who ordered those goods or services. That employee is then required to verify whether they've received a complete order or a partial order. They are also required to sign what's known as the receiving section of the purchase order, and they are also required to attach any supporting documentation, such as the packing slips that would have been received with that order. Once that is completed, that entire packet, which would include the signed purchase order and voucher, the invoice, the signed receiving section, that constitutes a three-way match for our supporting documentation, which allows my department or the accounts payable department to then move forward with processing that warrant or claim against the district. And we would then add that to our bills list for approval by the Board of Education. So again, this is something that's we're already correcting this action. We'll continue to move forward and utilize that process. Once those orders are paid, we do save and store the purchase order, voucher, invoice, and all supporting documentation on a Google Drive, which is shared, easily accessible, and it will be readily available for the auditors when they come into our district for our next comprehensive annual financial review. The next finding, which also fell underneath the examination of claims, our auditors identified that payments were made by electronic fund transfer for debt service, health benefits, utilities, food service, postage, and internet services. However, they were not included on the bills list approved by the board in the official minutes. In addition, the district had not adopted policies and procedures permitting the payments of claims electronically. Corrective action. In November 2020, the Board of Education formally adopted District Policy 6470.01, permitting the payment of claims electronically. Operating procedures will be implemented by myself to further support the implementation of this district policy. And to be specific about the operating procedures, I will be working in collaboration with our superintendent, who will identify a district employee who does not report to me as a school business administrator, so that we have checks and balances for the approval of these claims. The school business office will be responsible for setting up the actual claims, but there has to be another employee in the district, again, who does not report directly to the school business administrator. They will have the final authority to actually hit the send button or the final approval button to submit these claims electronically. And those details are outlined specifically in that district policy. And again, we will support that with our operating procedures moving forward. The next finding also fell under the examination of claims. And as our auditor stated, there was an audit of our health benefit bills, which indicated certain individuals continue to remain on dental benefits after separation of employment from the district. Corrective action. The district's payroll and benefits coordinator shall conduct monthly audits of all medical and dental benefit bills and reconcile as needed. These procedures shall be incorporated into the monthly activities for the school business office. And those monthly activities are our closing activities, in which we review all of our records, documentation, and perform any reconciliations as needed. I, as a school business administrator, will also develop a personnel action request form for the purposes of tracking and verifying internal actions when employees are hired and separated from employment with the district. And this personnel action request form, again, would allow us to ensure that all of the necessary steps or actions have been taken for each department. And this goes, although this particular finding in the audit was specific to dental benefits, there's also a need to make sure that we have additional layers to ensure that when an employee leaves the district, we're verifying those other aspects, such as making sure that equipment is returned, also ensuring that all the appropriate access for those employees are turned off, et cetera. And that personnel action request form will provide us that additional layer of security to ensure that those things are done, in addition to ensuring that employees are no longer active on our rolls for receiving medical or dental benefits. The next finding, again, fell under the examination of claims. And the audit of our payroll tax reporting revealed the information filing for the 1095-C form for the 2018 calendar year was not remitted in a timely manner. I want to point out that the district had not had any instances in which the 1095-C or any other IRS forms had not been submitted in a timely manner since this finding, which took place in 2018. The corrective action. The district's payroll and benefits coordinator shall conduct monthly audits of all medical and dental benefits, and again, reconcile as needed. And these procedures will be incorporated into the monthly activities for the school business office. And again, this will also tie into all IRS filings, which also call for monthly audits and reconciliations as well. Also, under examination of claims, this finding is an indication that post-travel purpose and relevance reports were not attached to purchase orders. It was also found that documentation to support travel expense reimbursements were not available in certain instances. Corrective action. The existing travel policy shall be reviewed and updated as determined by the Board of Education. I, as the school business administrator, will ensure that all supporting documentation be obtained and presented to the Board of Education for review prior to processing any travel reimbursements. All changes to existing policies related to travel shall be reflected in the district's purchasing manual. The purchasing manual has been published for all district employees, and the training of this manual was conducted on January the 13th. In addition to this, an annual memo will be provided to all employees outlining the requirements for travel reimbursements, and the topic of such shall also be reviewed during the annual training sessions for the district's purchasing procedures. Next finding falls under the board secretary's report. Our auditors found that the original budget per the appropriation report was not in agreement with the original budget as adopted. The appropriations report was approximately $230,000 less than the approved budget. 19 budget lines were not in agreement. In addition, the modified budget included prior year encumbrances that were reclassified as accounts payables. I, as a school business administrator, as a part of this corrective action, shall establish procedures wherein myself and the treasurer of school monies shall conduct a review of the district's approved budget as entered into the district's accounting software. All budget entries must be in agreement, and the confirmation of such must be provided to the superintendent of schools by June 15th annually. This date of June 15th is extremely important because the new fiscal year starts on July 1st. And on July 1st, our adopted budget must be finalized within the district software. All account lines and appropriation lines must be in agreement, because employees are given a green light to immediately begin making purchases for school supplies and other materials that are needed for the start of the school year. And they are allowed to begin making these purchases on July 1st. So again, this is a hard deadline. We will have the budget, which will be formally approved and adopted by the Board of Education. And this process will allow us to make sure that it is in fact in agreement with our accounting software. The next finding, again, this finding falls under the board secretary's report. And our auditors found that the state debit credit memorandum transactions totaling $430,240 were not reflected in the district's accounting records. The corrective action is that I, as the school business administrator, shall establish operating procedures to ensure full review and execution of all actions from state memos, including debit credit transactions for accounting purposes. For this current fiscal year, the funds that have to be encumbered to ensure this transaction is actually made in our books, that has already been done, has already been executed. And this debit credit transaction will occur prior to us closing out the fiscal year. I do not anticipate any additional changes to our state aid payments and feel confident in executing this task during the month of January after having another conversation with our auditors just to ensure that they don't want us to hold off or wait beyond this month. The next finding, again, falls under the board secretary's report. There were 12 budget line accounts that were overexpended as of June 30th, 2020, as a result of certain audit adjustments from findings previously noted. As per our auditors, a recommendation for this particular finding was not warranted. However, the following corrective action will be implemented. As the school business administrator, I will resolve any account deficits and certify at each Board of Education meeting that no account lines are in a deficit. This certification will also be supported by the records within the board secretary's report, which I always provide to the Board of Education and certify that they are in fact accurate to the best of my knowledge and understanding. Our next findings fall under the area of IDEA, which are federal funds for special education expenditures. The finding from our auditors was that the final expenditure reports for federal ESEA title grants and IDEA Part B basic grant programs were not in agreement with the district accounting records. This is an area that my team and I have already begun to address. And one thing that I will continue to do, as indicated in the corrective action plan, is to continue to collaborate with our Director of Curriculum and Instruction and our Supervisor of Special Services to draw down the state and federal grant funds. And with drawing down these funds, I am required to also submit requests for reimbursements to the New Jersey Department of Education on a monthly basis. At a minimum, these reports should be submitted quarterly. My own internal audit found that during last school year, reimbursement requests were only submitted to the Department of Education once during the fiscal year for some grants, and there were some grants that actually had 2 reimbursements requests that were submitted. But again, they should be occurring monthly, and if not monthly, at least quarterly. I will also formalize these processes by developing operating procedures which call for the monthly reconciliation of all special revenue sources. The next finding falls under the area of TPAF state reimbursements. And again, as our auditor indicated, the district did not calculate or remit to the state the reimbursement for TPAF, FICA, and pension for employees funded by federal grant programs. As a school business administrator, I will collaborate with our payroll and benefits coordinator to establish internal controls to ensure compliance with annual state and federal reporting requirements for TPAF reimbursements. These internal controls shall overlap with procedures for final expenditure reports for state and federal grants. We are also working in the district to also minimize the number of employees whose salaries are paid with any federal or state grants as well. We have recognized that this was a challenge in the oversight. We do have that report prepared. Was something that was not done timely on behalf of the district, but this is something that will be resolved and addressed going forward. This report will be provided at the same time that the final expenditure reports are due to the state of New Jersey. I think that it allows us to just have a cleaner submission when we align those 2 dates and submit both reports at the same time, as opposed to allowing time to lapse and allowing any of these reports to not be submitted in a timely manner. Our next finding falls into the area of school purchasing programs. And an audit of purchases and contract awards revealed the following. Payments were made in excess of the bid threshold for custodial supplies and various technology items for which public advertisements for bids were not sought. Payments were made in which the cost exceeded the quote threshold for which competitive quotations were not sought. And political contribution disclosure forms and business registration certificates were not on file and available for audit for certain vendors requiring such documentation. These are some areas that have already been addressed through the development of our purchasing manual for the district's procurement and purchasing program. And the purchasing manual already includes guidelines and operating procedures for the following areas: for travel reimbursements, the bid and quote thresholds, current bid threshold for the district being $32,000, and the quote threshold is 15% of that, which is $4,800. My office requires quotes to be submitted for all requisitions that we receive throughout the district. We do not approve any requisitions if we do not have any quotes or supporting documentation. And it doesn't, for me as a business administrator, it doesn't matter if the purchase is above the quote threshold or below the quote threshold. I believe it's good and sound practice for us to ensure that we always have quotes to support any requests for the purchase or procurement of goods and services. Our purchasing manual also includes the type of procurement methods we utilize and clearly indicates to our district employees which type of procurement methods we prefer. Our preferred method of procurement is to utilize state contracts or co-ops. And the reason we like to use the state contracts and co-ops is because these particular vendors have already been vetted. It allows us to increase our purchasing power, and it alleviates the need for our district to go out and advertise for any bids. If we use state contracts or co-ops, we're still required to obtain board approval for any purchase that in the accumulative would exceed the established bid threshold, right? And that will be provided to the board via resolution for approval. The next area is new vendor requests. This is extremely important as our auditors indicated that certain documentation was missing for vendors. While there are minimum guidelines that have already been established for obtaining certain documents from vendors, as our auditors indicated, the business registration certificate is only required when a vendor has received or $6,000 or more from our school district. A political disclosure document is not required unless the vendor has received $17,500 or more. It is our process and procedure that any vendors wishing to do business with the Leonia Board of Education, they must submit a W-9 form and a valid New Jersey business registration certificate in order for them to even be added as a new vendor. This information is required. It is something that has to be provided up front. And if the vendors cannot provide this information, they will not be allowed, they will not be approved, and they will not be allowed to do business with our school district. This is something that we've already put in place, and we have had to reject vendors and advise employees that they were unable to procure certain goods or services with vendors because the vendors could not produce the necessary information. And the last area that I want to highlight that our purchasing manual addresses is the purchase order, that approval timeline. The findings for our application for state aid, there were 2 students who reported as private school for disabled on the district work papers, but they could not be verified to a paid October tuition bill. It was also indicated that a net variance of 21 students was noted when comparing the number of low-income students reported on the ASSA, and a net variance of 8 students was also identified when comparing the number of LEP and low-income students that were reported on the ASSA. The corrective action will call for myself as the business administrator to collaborate with our student registration clerk to conduct an audit of existing student files to ensure, one, that the district has an active record for each student enrolled, two, to verify the accuracy of student classifications, and three, to reconcile any variances that may exist. I will also develop operating procedures to ensure that student records are maintained for all enrollments and that said records are in agreement with the annual ASSA report. Next finding falls under the area of transportation. And it was noted that some students were transported out of district but could not be traced to a signed tuition contract, and that students who were transported could not be traced to a paid October tuition bill. The corrective action is as follows. I, as the school business administrator, will collaborate with the transportation coordinator to establish operating procedures for the monthly review of student transportation ridership. Such reviews shall include contract reviews and student attendance, which shall be maintained for future audits. The district will also invest in transportation routing and tracking software to support the implementation of this corrective action. The proposed timeline for the corrective action are as follows. Overall, all corrective actions shall be addressed by March 1st, but on specific actions of reviewing and executing the auditor recommendations, as a school business administrator, such recommendations shall be executed by February 1st, 2021. A review and update of existing policies, which should be conducted through the board policy committee, should be conducted by March 1st or the first board meeting in the month of March. And the adoption of standard operating procedures, which are being developed by myself as the school business administrator, shall be provided to the Board of Education for formal adoption by March 1st. And hopefully the action will be taken at the first board meeting in the month of March, which is, I believe, March 9th, 2021. That concludes my presentation on the corrective action plan. I will now pause and answer any questions from any board members or members of the administration.
Rashawn, if you could just do me a favor, make me a list again so I can do the public questions when it comes up. I also just want to quickly be the first to just say, we've never had, Leonia has not always had the best luck with our business office. And this is like the first time we've had, at least since I've been here, I don't know, I feel very reassured in your capacity to fix this stuff. And that's a great thing. I mean, like, I don't know if the public or anyone who's new to it is going to really have is going to be able to fully appreciate it and understand, but like, this isn't normal where a business administrator hits the ground running and says, by March 1st, this is all going to be fixed. I just want to make it very clear that's not normal in a board, for a board. So Rashawn, seriously, thank you so much for all the work you put into this. And on the finance committee, I look forward to, working with you to make sure that this, all these action, I mean, this is very ambitious, but I think it's with your leadership, I think it's going to get done. So in your office. So I just want to thank you there on that again. Okay. So are there questions on Rashawn's thing?
Yeah, Bryce, yeah, I do have a couple quick questions if I can. Rashawn, thank you for the presentation. I appreciate the amount of effort put in basically short order with the audit only having been completed at the end of December. So just a couple quick questions, and I know, I've spoken to you about this, but just for the benefit of the public, but some of the deficiencies that were found in the auditor's report, speak back to charges that may not have been recouped, or benefits that were provided that may not have necessarily been appropriate at the time. So I was just curious, and I don't want you to become a collections agency, but if you can speak to the efforts that might be happening to try to make sure that any missed tuition or anything like that is going to be recovered, as necessary and as appropriate. And then the second question is just curious. I love what you provided. But approaching it cautiously. I mean, we've now had 1 year since this all. Well, excuse me, 6 months since this occurred, and it's a review of 1 year past. Is there, what are your thoughts on having a periodic check-in on this with the board, just on how progress is going with your corrective action plan? Only because some of them seem to be, somewhat significant. So, I'd like to hear your thoughts if that's something that's reasonable.
Yes. So I'll address the second part first. I think it is absolutely appropriate to make that a standard for myself as a school business administrator to report any progress or any updates for the implementation of the corrective action plan. I just think it's the right thing to do, and that's how we hold ourselves accountable to what we say we're going to do as professionals. If it's okay with the board and through our board president, if you would like for me to establish a timeline for those check-ins or to provide that updated report monthly through the finance committee meetings and through my monthly business administrative reports, so that they could also be provided to the public, because the public wants to know that these corrective actions are being executed as well. I have no problem doing that. I think it works in our favor for everyone.
Bryce, if I may, I was thinking more along the lines of quarterly. I know you're very busy, so if it's added work, just to let you know what I was thinking in terms of either quarterly or even every 4 months or something like that. But Bryce, I'll defer to you. Yeah.
Yeah. No. Well, since it's since this whole thing, Rashawn, you've given us the timetable of February and March 1st each. I would suggest that this is going to be deferred to the finance committee for the most heavy reviews, and then the findings and the results. Rashawn, I'm sure you can just quickly report them to the board during your business administrator reports. I would assume if that's acceptable. I mean, I would think that's.
Will do. In regards to the recouping any lost funds, I can't speak to that. I don't know exactly how that will work for us. In an ideal world, yes, we should be able to hopefully recoup every dollar, every penny. We did hear from our auditors that there were 4 employees that were identified when he gave his remarks earlier. We are conducting that internal audit within the payroll department. We have a letter prepared. We're sending out to the provider of our benefits for dental plans to ensure that those employees are officially removed, and to request that we receive some kind of reduction or discount for any overages that we were charged. We don't want to obviously pay for any employee that we shouldn't be paying for. So I'll have to provide an update at the next committee meeting about where we are with that.
Okay, thank you. And Bryce, if I could, just one follow-up question.
Of course.
And I know the auditor's report indicated that some of the services for busing and for out-of-district students, it indicated that they couldn't link them to a tuition bill, but that doesn't necessarily mean that there wasn't a tuition bill already issued, correct?
No.
It might have been paid, but just not, they couldn't find the correlation.
Yeah, that's exactly what that, and that goes back to the records keeping.
Okay.
It's extremely important. If an auditor comes into the district and they request a piece of information, and let's say that piece of information is stored away in the basement, but I'm unable to go to the basement and bring that documentation back up to them, in the auditor's mind, that documentation does not exist. And that's exactly what happened under these instances. I know through the meetings that I've had with our coordinator for transportation and our supervisor of special services, we are not providing any transportation to services to students who are not eligible to receive those services. I want to be very, very clear about that. The district did not have the documentation that the auditors requested. and that led to our findings. So that again leads to more so poor records management as opposed to us giving services that we should not be.
Okay, thank you. That's
Are
it.
there
You're welcome.
any other questions? Michael? Yeah, Michael, you're on mute.
Hi.
There you go.
Rashawn, I appreciate you taking accountability. It's very unusual to get such accountability in the district, and I appreciate it, but it's an expectation of all of us. I recognize it, and I recognize it as sincere. You mentioned that collaboration will be needed with your peers.
Yes.
And do you see anyone else who you may need to collaborate with? Like, for example, with these monthly audits that the benefits administrator will be doing on benefits and claims, who will review that?
Yeah, so I will, because I'm the direct supervisor of the payroll and benefits coordinator. And even though that benefits and coordinator reports to me, we still work together. We're still, in my view, we're also peers in this work as well. So I do speak in that sense when I say collaborating. And we also just brought, which I'm very happy to report, as I mentioned earlier about building staff capacity. We have a new team member who's starting tomorrow, who's able to now help us with some of these additional areas that we need to address. So in terms of being able to conduct those monthly audits, we do have the capacity within the school business office. And I trust the capability of those individuals on our team to collaborate and make sure that these audits are in fact being conducted. So there's another set of eyes and not just me and my 4 eyes looking at the monthly audit, but some other individuals within our team to help out.
Rashawn, who's ultimately accountable for the success of these audits?
The entire administration, but the person who will ultimately be responsible is the school business administrator. And I wanted to make sure that I kind of stressed that point earlier. We have policies in place. You know, the auditors talked about the travel policy earlier today. And, you know, a corrective action could be to go in, well, let's go create a new policy. But if you create a new policy and it's not being enforced, what good is it? So there's the creation of policies that you all are doing as the board. The expectation is that myself, my colleagues, administration, we enforce those policies, but then the rest of the stakeholders also have to be knowledgeable about those policies and they have to respect them. So that means we have to provide training, which we've done through the purchasing manual. But then when things go wrong, we also have to make sure that we're holding those individuals accountable as well. And I'm happy that, you know, Dr. Bertolini supports me in that. And my colleagues and my peers, you know, we're working together in a collaborative manner to fix things. I think my colleagues realize that they have skin in the game, that there's multiple stakeholders around the table that play a part in making sure that we have a successful audit. It's not just one person. There's not just one person who's submitting requisitions. There's not just one person who will be responsible for getting a quote or making sure they filled out their requisition with the appropriate information. I mean, there's some instances where an individual can go out and literally use the services of a contracted vendor, but they may not have selected state contract when they submitted the requisition. There's a drop-down box. If you put open market instead of state contract, when the vendors come and pull that purchase order for review, they're not looking at it the same way that they will look at a purchase order for a state contracted vendor because it was filled out incorrectly. And again, those things come with the education, the professional development, and again, our operating procedures.
What are the job titles of the folks you're referring to as stakeholders, Rashawn?
The job titles, I would say,
I don't want to mention people's names, that's all.
I think everyone in the school district is a stakeholder. Everyone in the school district has the ability to, issue a purchase order, might be responsible for completing certain forms. So, we're all stakeholders. Even a vendor, even though they don't necessarily work for our school district, they are external stakeholders, and they are responsible for following the operating procedures of the school district as well.
With the electronic payments, I didn't quite get how specifically you're going to ensure that the electronic payments are reported to the board.
Yep. So with the auditor, then provide the technical aspect of it. So in our accounting software, whenever a bill is paid, it's usually produced inside of a batch. We produce that report, we provide it to the board. If an electronic payment is made to a vendor, that's done directly from the bank account. If it's done directly through the bank account, you basically have to note the transaction inside of the accounting software. And what we would do is process a hand check, right? And that's basically like a dummy check. So let's say, as an example, Mr. Phelan, the district paid you $500 for services rendered, but that $500 was paid to you as a direct transaction from our bank account to your bank account. There is no need to create a check, right? Because you got paid already as a direct transaction. But for records keeping purposes, we still have to go through the same process as if we were writing a check for you. And that transaction should be noted on a bills list, and it should be indicated that that was a hand check, which lets us know that that is something that would have been processed as an electronic payment. And that should still come to the board for approval as a part of the bills list.
And the issue with, thank you, the issues around separated employees and their benefits is one that has happened before. And this is not a slight on you, because I actually am confident in you. But the answer the board was given by the district last time was very similar, that a system would be put in place. That is a biggie, and I'm hoping that one you could flesh out in the future for us specifically. Last time, at least, there was an issue of two systems. We were told anyway by the previous administrator, that there was an issue with two systems not talking to each other. So I'd be curious how that particular issue, and you don't have to answer now, but the issue of separated employees on leave, recently retired, etc., how we catch that they should or should not receive benefits. So that's just an aside. Everything you're talking about, all the items you spoke about, Rashawn, who's ultimately accountable for them?
The corrective action plan items?
Yes.
I am, as a school business administrator.
What role does Dr. Bertolini play?
Dr. Bertolini, he plays the role of the superintendent of schools, in the sense that he has given me the charge and the authority to execute on these items. And he's put me in charge of ensuring that the corrective action plan is fully executed and implemented on behalf of the school district. In addition to that, Dr. Bertolini provides the resources and the necessary support that I will need as a school business administrator to effectively execute the duties of my office. I would say that nothing can be done in the school district if you don't have by a school business administrator, if you don't have the support of a strong, duly qualified superintendent of schools, which I believe we have in Dr. Bertolini. And again, he helps, he collaborates, he also shares ideas, recommendations, and he helps to build that environment that I mentioned earlier, that environment of collaboration where we're all working together. There are no silos. when it comes down to the work being done in the school business office. And that's something that he's preached to me since I stepped into the district on day one. And I'm thankful that that's something that he continues to push and expect not only of myself, but of the rest of our administrators and staff members within the district.
Thank you. So when anything referred to as an audit or a report, I don't know, I consider a report to be an Excel spreadsheet with columns and numbers, but different people have different definitions. But whatever summaries you come up with, you will find time to review with Dr. Bertolini as well. Well, that's a leading question. Will Dr. Bertolini be
Yes.
Reviewed?
Yes, absolutely. So Dr. Bertolini, myself, and Director of Curriculum Instruction, we have our weekly standing meetings and also a lot of impromptu meetings. So nothing is being done in our district, again, without the support and the knowledge of Dr. Bertolini. And any actions that are being presented or developed are going to be shared with Dr. Bertolini in advance for his approval prior to me bringing it to the Board of Education.
Okay, thank you for your time, Rashawn.
Mary, I saw that you had your hand raised.
Rashawn, thanks for a great report and great explanations. I think you really made it understandable for the public to see where we're going to be heading in the future. So thanks a lot for all of that. I have a quick question about the school food services program. In the auditor's report, it said something about $100,000. Our expenditures were over $100,000. But and we're also, at this time, I've read in your reports that people are available for free meals at this point, right? During COVID and during the pandemic.
Yes.
How are our expenses then? Are they increasing in food services, or are they about the same? You know, can you give us a little clue on that?
So surprisingly, this school year, we saw less students opting in to receive meals this school year. And I think the pandemic had a lot to do with it. Students who may have normally been in a situation where they purchased meals, if they were home because they opted for virtual instruction, those students most likely were probably going to eat the food that was provided to them. I did have meetings with a number of meetings actually with our food services team this year about things that we could do as a district to increase participation. We opted into the extended SSO, which is the seamless summer option, that allowed us as a district to continue to provide free meals to all students, regardless of what their lunch status was, whether it was free lunch, reduced lunch, etc. And we sent out additional messages as a way to increase participation. I don't have the official report from the food services department right now to show whether or not we've seen an uptick in the last few weeks, but the expenditures associated with that, we will be reimbursed through our meal claims through the USDA and the National School Lunch Program for any meal that we prepare and serve for students during the school year. So the more students who opt to get the free meals, the more meals we can reimburse, which means that is more revenue that we'll receive as a district. I will say that we have a break-even contract for our food services. And with that means that at the end of each fiscal year, the district at a minimum would break even with the food services program. We would never experience a loss under the current contract that we have. So even if we ran in the red, $5,000, our contract calls for us to be made whole so that we would at a minimum break even.
Okay. I'm happy that you're talking about this tonight in more detail, because I think it's nice for the public to hear it who's listening in, but I hope that the public will also share this information with people that they know. So if they have a child who's leaving school at say 12:30 after in-person classes or even virtual classes, if they want to get the grab and go sandwich so that they don't have to worry about making a meal if their parent is working on the computer at home, there's a meal already prepared, ready for them. All they have to do is ask for it. So thanks for explaining that, Sean.
Oh, you're welcome.
Are there other board members with questions? Okay, seeing none, we can move on. All right, we're now at the first public comment portion of the meeting. It's on public comments, concerns, questions, or praise on agenda items. The second public comment portion is on non-agenda items. Is there a motion to take us into public comment? Someone? Mary, is there a second?
Motion.
Second, Maria. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? All right, great. We're now in public comment. Please just use the raise your hand function and I will put a timer on for 2 minutes. And we will give you your 2 minutes to speak. So just give me 1 second to pull that up actually. Okay, 1 second. Okay, and again, the first public comment portion is on agenda items and the second one will be on non-agenda items. All right, the first person is Joseph. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, Bryson, the board. Silly question. Agenda item, is that the audit? Can I ask a question about that?
Absolutely.
That's what I assume. Okay. First, I just want to make a comment about the free lunch. I just became aware of it actually last week, and I'm utilizing it, and I hope a lot more people hear about it. So I'll definitely share that. So my questions first, I wanted to know how large is the business department that report up into the business administrator? Second, the 430,000 credit memo, is that an actual savings for us or was that an accounts receivable that we just didn't clear out? And the third question, the 12 overdraft accounts that we went over the budget, how much total did we go over in those accounts?
Okay.
That's it. Thank you.
Just so everyone knows, we'll answer all the questions that are given to us during the board comment, which is coming up right after this.
Cool. Great. Thank you, guys. Thank you, board.
Okay. All right. Next up is Arthur. You should be able to speak now. It just says you're muted, Arthur.
Can you hear me? I have a couple questions. First, I think Rashawn did a great job answering all the audit issues, and hope he didn't establish too aggressive a period to get it all done. But I think it was well done. The questions I have are under your facilities, under finance, your facilities. 11911F21 and the chart, and you don't have to reference it, and you can answer these later because you may have to research it. There's a project which I'm not taking issue with the project. It's a handicap lifts. Was that done already? And if it was, the budget was shown as $95,000 for 2 lifts. Clearly you need to have the facility accessible, but I was questioning why $95,000 for 2 lifts seems excessive. This next issue is the $71,443 that was budgeted, perhaps spent already for what I refer to as the house. It's the Board of Education room. That's an awful lot of money that was spent. It's a house, so it wasn't a water heater, it wasn't a furnace, it wasn't an air conditioner, and it wasn't a roof, because all of those would cost a lot unless you did them all at the same time. So, you know, an asset that's valued at $357,000, that seemed like a lot of money. And there's another $12,000 budget for this year or next year. So that's an awful lot of money that was being spent on that facility. So I'd like to know what that was being, what that's being spent on. And I think that is it. So you can answer them in the comments area, or you can email me. Thank you.
Okay. Next is Laura Molina. You should be able to speak now.
Hi, thank you, Bryce. Rashawn, that was an unbelievable PowerPoint. I just want to point something out that I'm sure that you guys notice, or Rashawn will notice when he goes through it. I'm wondering about some of that paperwork that maybe possibly you couldn't find, that might have just been buried deep down inside. But I'm also wondering if some of those could have been Edgewater students that you don't actually have the paperwork on. Like they talked about students that were transported out of district that you didn't have tuition agreements on. If Edgewater is paying that tuition, you wouldn't necessarily have a copy of the tuition agreement. I don't know if that's right or not, but just as an FYI, that could be some of your missing pieces. But I want to thank you. The audit, I'm sure, hit hard for the district, but I think you have a really strong plan, and I hope that you have a really, I don't know, energetic team behind you, because you have a lot on your plate, and I wish you the best of luck. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lori. Okay. Oops. All right. So there's no more hands up. So with that, is there a motion to take us back into the board comments / student comments?
Motion.
Thank you, Maria. Is there a second? Someone?
Second.
Okay, Mary. All right. Why don't we start off? Rashana, I think I'll just turn it right back to you if you want to just answer the questions. Kevin, perhaps too. And then if any board members have board comments, but why don't we start off answering the questions? So yeah, I think they're all directed pretty much. Yes.
So, sure. With the first set of questions, I think I missed one. If I don't address it, if you could just repeat, maybe allow me to repeat the question. I got the question about the $430,000 debit credit memo. So when the district annually receive a statement and a payment schedule from the Department of Education, advising us total amount of state aid and when we how much we would be paid each month, the state deducts any payments that we have to make to Bergen County Special Services for any of our students that we send there to receive education. So it's deducted from the revenue and the state pays them directly. However, on our records, we have to document a transaction as if we received that money and we paid the Bergen County Special Services directly. It's really just to make sure that the books accurately reflect the money that we should have brought in and should have been paid out to Bergen County Special Services. The other question was about the size of the business office staff. Our business office, we currently have 4 employees in the business office who report directly to me. I'm going to go and use the word collaboration again as well. As the school business administrator by law, I am the person who's technically responsible for the financial and operational components of the school district. I do not have a direct report like Kevin Woods, who's our supervisor for buildings and grounds. He does not report directly to me. However, I am responsible for the upkeep and the maintenance of those facilities. So Kevin and I, we collaborate and we work very closely on all of the projects and the upkeep of our facilities. So that's another reason why I stressed that component of collaboration earlier in my corrective action plan. And I think there was one more question that was asked that I did not capture.
The overdraft.
The 12 overdraft question was on that.
Yeah. So I don't have the details on what those overdraft line item accounts were. I will say that though the auditors will provide adjustments that need to be made. So if you go back and go to the final board secretary's report for last school year, no accounts were overdrawn because they were in fact corrected. But when the auditors came in, again, because of some of the other issues they identified, you saw the overage of those particular accounts, but they have been since rectified because by law, we're not allowed to have any of those over expenditures. And that means we have to make some line item transfers to account for that.
Thank you very much. And Kevin, I don't know if don't know if you have it in front of you. I mean, I don't believe we've done the handicap lifts. Just so everyone knows, the comprehensive facilities plan that's on the agenda tonight is really just a starting point, more of a formality of after we send it off to the county. The real heavy lifting is now going to come from the committees to build it out, and for Rashawn and Ed and the administration to say this is what's actionable, the board to prioritize it, and then the entire board to pass it. So just to kind of put it into reference, it's more of a starting point than an ending point. Kind of like the comprehensive action plan that you presented. It's the starting point, not the ending point. So it's definitely tonight is, I think, I'm very optimistic about where we go from here. But Kevin, I wasn't sure if you had a comment on that or might be taking.
Sure.
There he is.
Hey guys, so to Arthur's questions, I know he questioned the two handicap lifts at ACS. This is for ADA compliancy. Again, that's an estimate. However, there are architectural designs that are needed for both those lifts. The one lift for $45,000 that's noted in the comprehensive plan, alone for the hallway is $45,000 because it has to make a bend, and then we're building another handicap lift into the rear of the stage. So two substantial projects. That's why we budgeted the way we did.
Did you have any or perhaps Rashawn or Kevin about the 71.4 on the house? I like that term, the house. I don't have anything in front of me, but perhaps we can get back to you, Arthur, on that expenditure.
Yeah, I have to get back on that one.
Okay, not a problem. Okay. For other board comments, are there board comments? I do want to just say one thing. I'll just share my screen real quick. I want to, Kevin, stay on. I want to share with the community. 1 second. Let's see. Hang on. I'm very excited about this. So hang on. Here we go. So Kevin just sent me this photograph. At long last, our propane fueling bus project is now complete. And what's completed it is this item here. That is our fueling tank. And that means that our buses can now be fueled on site in our district. In fact, Kevin said that the first propane bus, our propane bus got its first fill up by our propane station already. And I want everyone to know that this is not only saving the district money. Propane is half the cost of diesel fuel, but it's also half the emissions as well. So not only is it green in the sense of the environment, but it's green in the sense of saving money for the taxpayer. And this project took a long time, a lot of effort. And Kevin, I really want to thank you for really making this all happen. This is a project that no other district in our area has endeavored to do. And I know many are envious of and said that because we have this propane fueling station, they might go out and get them and fill up here and pay us for it. So
show the green for.
Oh, yeah. And just to show how green it is, you can notice the green bird that Bluebird puts on the buses to signify their environmentally friendly nature. So Kevin and Rashawn and Ed and the administration, the committees that went into it, I really thank you. It's an amazing project that this board undertook, and I think we now have 5 propane buses, and I'm sure as the long-range facility plan shows, we'll be having to buy more soon in the not too distant future to ensure that we maintain a safe and up-to-date bus fleet. So again, thank you very much. It's a wonderful project to say that we've completed. Thank you, Kevin. Okay. Other board comments? All right, seeing none, we'll move along. Student representatives, you guys have comments?
Actually, yeah, I do have something to say for board committee. I actually just wanted to discuss the upcoming schedule for the LHS students that is planned to begin in February. After the release of the schedule, I noticed there were many people who were concerned or worried about it. So with the help of my friend Pilar, we actually made a Google form that took the input of students, and I'd like to share with you some of the data and anonymous comments left by the students and why I and many students believe there should be reconsideration of the new schedule and changes. So first, we had over 311 responses to the Google form. So in a school of around 800, I think it's a pretty good sample size of our opinion. So I think the most important question that we asked is we asked the students, how would you rate the new schedule? So out of the 311 people, only 5 found it favorable or strongly favorable. 59% found it strongly unfavorable, and 32% found it unfavorable. So we also wanted to just grasp why these students thought the new schedule doesn't work for them. So we asked them to select out of multiple options, and 47% found that there were too many periods in one day. 47% found that it was too confusing. 74% found that it was too overwhelming. 77% found that school starts too early. 51% found that lunch begins too early. And also 20% found that actually it was nice that they get to see their classes more often. And 25% said that actually shorter periods are more convenient. So especially since most students don't like the new schedule, I asked them, we've had 2 quarantine schedules. We have the current one, the A through H day, and we had our original one, the AB 4 periods a day. So I asked them, which one do you prefer? 70% prefer the current schedule, with 30% preferring the original quarantine schedule. So there's obviously a strong preference to keep the current schedule or to relook the new schedule design. And I allowed people to leave feedback, and I'd just like to quote 3 of the feedbacks from students themselves. One said that, I think the schedule we currently have is much less overwhelming than the new schedule. However, I feel that the period should be shortened because it is hard to sit in one class and stare at a computer screen for 2 hours straight with only a 5-minute break. We just aren't used to it. Another one said, I understand the concerns some parents or faculty may have with students not seeing classes enough, but the new schedule is just a difficult change. It's been changed halfway through the year, and as an AP student, the workload even now is overwhelming. The new schedule is not a realistic schedule for the best interest of the students in these difficult times. And finally, just one more. One student also said, I've been accustomed to the schedule, 2 classes per day. It is less stressful for me. I feel like I have more time to distress and do my work. However, I also do not mind the 4 classes per day as well, due to how the classes are only an hour and it is less of a headache. Either way, I am satisfied, but the newest schedule does not provide me with any satisfaction. So this is what I found through the form. There's likely some students are also going to be making additional comments during public comment after. So I hope you take those into account as well. And if you want these statistical data in writing, I'd be happy to email it to you. And if you have any questions, I'd love to address them.
Well, first off, thank you for doing this. I think it's really important that you're actively giving your peers a voice, and that's exactly what this position was created to do. So I want to just applaud you first and foremost for taking the initiative to actually do that. I'm glad you're making good use of the position. Second, yes, please send in, you can send them to, I guess, Dr. Bertolini or to Mr. Calendar, and they'll share them with the Board of Education for our review. But regarding this topic in particular, I would say is very educationally based. So I would default to Dr. Bertolini to respond to this.
I was planning on talking about it later on in my report. So.
Okay, so if it's okay with you, Eli, Dr. Bertolini will address it in his report.
Which I think is fine.
Yeah, which is next. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, thank you.
Do other board members have questions about it? Maybe perhaps after Dr. Bertolini's report. Okay.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
The students that responded, are they kind of evenly distributed between virtual and in-person learning, or are these the students that go in person?
So I can get that for you. I think it was largely, so we had an even distribution overall between freshmen, sophomore, junior, seniors. When I asked, do you go to school in person? There was 280 responses, 83% were online.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay. All right. Definitely worth discussion, especially the education committee could discuss this. All right, so we'll turn it over to the administrative reports. Dr. Bertolini, show is yours.
Thank you, Bryce. First of all, again, I want to thank Rashawn for the detailed report. And as I've said many times, This year, for the first year of my 3 years, I'm very confident with our grant situation with Zanti and Rashawn working together, and just with the overall confidence upstairs from my office in the board office. So again, I want to thank Rashawn for presenting today and establishing some clarity and professionalism in the office. Just a couple of things. One, we reopened the school year after an extended break. We were precautionary and we went virtual for a few days before, a total of 12 days before and after, a total amount of 12 days. We've been able to open again as both hybrid, in-person and virtual, but it's getting more difficult each day to be able to keep the school open. Numerous schools have closed or gone virtual, fully virtual. We have parents that certainly want in-person, and we have parents that want to keep their students virtual. So we still want to keep the hybrid method of having both platforms. It's becoming a challenge every day to do that, but we are still able to maintain that. I was going to talk about the schedule, but I'll give my side of the story why we think it's a need to a change. First of all, when we have our regular school year, which will hopefully come to soon with the vaccine, whether it be the beginning of the fourth marking period or September, we'll return in the high school level to a normal schedule, which is 6 periods of school a day. Currently, we only have 2 periods. The start time in a regular school year is 7:50. The new schedule has us starting school at 8:30. We currently have 2 classes per day of 2 hours. There's been some concern for numerous types of students that 2 hours is too long for one class. And the concern that we've had from the very beginning is the safety. One of our criteria to start the year off was the safety of our faculty and student body. By our schedule, where we don't have a transfer of classes during the school day internally, we've been able to keep our school open. If we had numerous districts have 4 classes in the morning where they go in between classes. And once a kid gets a positive or a teacher gets a positive test, we pretty much shut down the whole building. So by the way we have our schedule built, we've been able to keep the middle school and high school open every day this year. We've not had to close the school, either school, because of contamination. So when we decided on this new schedule, it was discussed in length in the administrative team. There was some discussion to go to 2 periods in the morning and then 2 periods in the afternoon. But the concern there was a health concern of students and teachers sharing classrooms and different types of students. So we went against that idea. So right now we have 2 hours a day of 120 minutes, 2 classes, which is a total of 240 minutes. We're going to 3 classes a day of 90 minutes, which is additional time of 30 minutes per school day. So we think that more contact time for our students with the teachers is important. So even though there is an increase, it really is only an 11% increase, and we need to move even further to a longer day as we get closer and closer to a full day back to normal. More importantly than the 30 extra minutes, we are meeting 3 times in a cycle with the students and the teachers instead of just twice a cycle. The cycle is 8 days long. So currently, our students meet with their teacher in person only once, and only once virtually. By going to this schedule, instead of meeting twice over an 8-day cycle, we're meeting 3 times over an 8-day cycle. And it's always been a concern about contact time with the students. But it's important that we are increasing the amount of student contact time with the teachers, amount of days, and also the amount of time without risking our staff with transmission of the disease. So we're trying to keep us safe and increasing the time that we are going to school. And we are, again, planning maybe the 4th marking period, going to a longer schedule with more classes. And again, once we go back to full time, the students are going to class 6 times. They meet 6 classes a day. We currently meet 2 classes a day. We're only asking to go to 3 classes a day. I think it's educationally sound. I think more contact days are very important, and increased contact time is certainly helpful for all our students. And the start time, which is earlier than it has been since the pandemic, is still 40 minutes later than normal start time. That's it. Oh, yeah, okay, well, I'm sorry. Another topic is the 5th grade. So far, we've had the staffing has been finalized by both schools. The logistics in the new building in the middle school has been set up. We've discussed the curriculum with the staff and with the administrators. I discussed with John Sassy the contractual implications of moving the 5th grade to the middle school. And next month, a couple of weeks in February, Mr. Sacco will meet with the staff from the 5th grade. We'll talk about the curriculum again, technology in the classrooms, the new furniture that we'll have to purchase for the 5th grade when we move into the new building. And once this is all established, we'll have the parent advisory committee meet again to discuss our progress and address any concerns that the parents have as we move the current 4th grade to the middle school. And then the last point is our professional development meeting, which went very, very well yesterday. We've had actually 2 school districts hear about it and heard how positive the faculty have been, and they've asked us for the information. Montclair State and us have formed an agreement for the rest of the year. And I want to introduce Zanti Karamanos, who's our Director of Curriculum Instruction, who has been a key person in developing this program with Montclair State. So I want to hand it over to Zanti just to update us on how well the day went yesterday.
Thanks. So yesterday's professional development day, yesterday we were closed for students. So we had a full day. We were able to create this full day agenda for our staff. So we started the day from 9 to 11. We had 2 keynote speakers. The first session was Dr. Bree Picower. She did a session on, her title of her session was called Reading, Writing, and Racism, Disrupting Whiteness in the Classroom. Her presentation was based on her book that was recently published. So we had a great presentation from her for an hour, and then we moved into social emotional learning and the anti-bias and anti-racist educator, who was presented by Steve Fidelity, who's an educational psychologist. Then at around 12 to 2, we had professional development breakout sessions. So our staff were able to choose from one session to attend. The sessions varied. We had sessions on developing a racial justice lens, traditions, curriculum, and policy, based around curriculum and policy. We had another session on culturally responsive teaching. We had a session on addressing mental health crisis in our schools. Cultural literacy in high school settings. We had a shelter instruction training that was conducted by our supervisor of ESL and world language. And then we also provided some technology sessions. We had Google Classroom, and we had a session on Google Classroom and Screencastify. We had a session on Jamboards and extensions, different extensions for your student engagement. We had a session on Google Classroom and Flipgrid. And then we also had a session on Padlet, Edpuzzle, and Pear Deck. And then we ended the day with a closing session altogether titled Self-Care for Educators. So we had a long day of professional development, but it was a great day. We took a lot out of it. We sent a feedback survey at the end of the day, and we had very good feedback from it. 71.6% of the educators that responded to and just for reference, the PD day we invited all staff. So that included our paraprofessionals, that included the morning sessions, included our building staff, our office staff. We wanted, especially the first 2 morning sessions, we wanted everybody there, everybody receiving the same message, and everybody feeling a part of this day and connecting us all together under one day, one special day. So, the feedback we received about half of our attendees responded to the survey, and from that 76.1% agreed that there was an effective and impactful day of professional development. 88.5% of the respondents said that the presenters were very effective, and 72.5% overall rated the day as excellent. So we are very excited for the day. We have another day for professional development coming in on March 15th. Our initial plan is to continue the partnership with Montclair with the Network for Educational Renewal. and work with them to help plan that day and continue the work that we've started. The Professional Development Committee is meeting in a few weeks to really go over that and really set the agenda for that day.
Zonti, you want to add something about the book purchase?
So yeah, so Dr. Bree Cower's book is coming out actually tomorrow or Wednesday, or tomorrow is Wednesday. So her book is coming out. So as a, kind of a day to wrap up the day, we will be purchasing the book for all of our staff members in the district. And then in the next few months, we also have recently rolled out virtual book clubs as a professional development means. So that book is not in our book club this upcoming February and March, but it will be in the next series of book clubs we set up.
So I just want to thank Zonti, first of all, for yesterday. And also, as I mentioned earlier, but may have forgotten that Zonti is in charge of our grant money. So all those books that we're purchasing is through grant money. And that's why, as I said, Rashawn and Zonti are on the same page in making sure that we fully utilize our grant funds, we utilize them properly, and we document them properly. So I'm very confident that we will not have any audit findings next year in regard to our grant money. And that's thanks to both Zonti and Rashawn. I am a member of that book club. I'm going to be reading one of the books once Zonti gives it to me. And I'm very happy that we're going to purchase the book because it's going to make the self-examination of our policies and our procedures in the classroom, also about how we are addressing a very diverse community, and not just racially and ethnically, but also economically. There's a lot of things that, some things you might say that just may not be the best way to say it. And this is going to make us do more of a self-examination for us. So again, I want to thank Zonti for yesterday and for the upcoming March 15th one. And I'm she's doing a great job, as I said, Rashawn is also. And back to Bryce.
And I just want to echo that and say, Zonti, I was going through the racial justice resolution that this board passed, and I'm starting to really check off a lot of things that have gotten done. I just want to thank you so much for your hard work and dedication to making that happen. That's an example of a board providing the administration with seriously ambitious tasks, and you've knocked it out of the water thus far. So thank you so much. Okay, Rashawn, dare I ask, do you have a business administrator report tonight? I can't imagine you got anything left in you, but if you do, feel free. No. Oh, okay. Okay, great. We'll move on to committees, but before that, I'd like us to, I'm going to go over the committee appointments for this year. Board members, you should all have, thank you. Board members, you should all have a list emailed to you, and then this has actually been updated onto the website under committees. So if you click on the individual committees, it should come out now. I'm just going to go over them real quick, and then I'm going to ask for just approval on it. So we've changed a few and consolidated a few and added a few, changing for our needs. So for the standing committees, they've pretty much stayed the same -1. So we have community relations, and that's going to be chaired by Mary, and then the members are Dan, Christina, and Noreen. Myself, because I'm board president, I'm on all the committees ex officio, so I'm not just going to say my name, and Dr. Bertolini is on all the committees as well. All right, so for education, we have Noreen as the chair, Anna, Kim, and Mary. For education, we have, I'm sorry, education printed twice here. Sorry about that. For finance and planning, I'm chairing it, and then we have Isaac, Christina, Maria, and Dan. Rashawn, Kevin, and Ed are also on that. And just to let everyone know, we've combined our long-range committee with our finance committee just because of mostly redundancy. And to add on to that, this year we're going to be having a tech subcommittee that Isaac's going to be leading because it's going to be a huge portion of this year's expenditures and needs special attention. And Isaac, I thank you very much for all you've done thus far on it. I know you've had several meetings on it, so we look forward to meeting as a finance committee, as a whole committee, to discuss that. I'm sorry?
Major tech report in February.
Oh, yes, thank you. And speaking of, thank you for reminding me that. Speaking of technology, just to interrupt myself, Tafari Anderson, our tech director, will be giving a major, what we promised is coming now. So he's giving the proposal that the board will have reviewed by then, but it'll become public on our February 9th meeting. Safety and Security is chaired by Michael, and on it is Maria, Kim, and Anna. And then we have a new committee. It's a policy committee. A lot of boards have policy committees, and I felt like, when I was making these committees, I said, we debate a lot of policy a lot of times. Maybe we should have a formal committee to look at it. So the way I organize this committee is the same people who are on our state school board association and our county school board association. So it's going to be chaired by Isaac, and then on it is myself, Michael, and Mary. And then I added something else this year. I wanted to make our ad hoc committees a little bit more noticeable and notable. So this year we have our green team, and it's very community involved. There's a lot of wonderful members of our community that are involved in it. And as our board representation is going to be Mary, myself, and Kim. We have our diversity inclusion committee. That's going to be myself, Dan, and Anna. And then we have, for the first time, we have our Leonia and Edgewater Joint Committee. And that's been put in the works by the Edgewater previous president, Sandy, Christina, myself, and Ed, and Noreen. We felt it was very important that, there's an ongoing constant dialogue between the two districts just to make sure that, everyone's always on the same page and to continue the strong working relationship. So on that committee is going to be myself and Noreen, and then representing Edgewater is going to be Sandy and Christina. Then the negotiations committee we've organized, I'm not really sure if they're going to need to meet this year because there's no contract coming up. They might meet towards the end of the year, but just good to have it. So it'll be Mary, Maria, and Isaac. And just to be clear on this committee, it's a very unique committee, and there are oftentimes boards, we are so connected to educators, or maybe you're endorsed, I don't know, I'm kidding, but you can't be part of negotiations. So it's oftentimes it falls on certain people to take on that task, and I thank them tremendously because it's not fun to have to, it's not always fun to have to do that, just negotiating, that is. And then lastly, it's the Restart Committee, which will be focusing on getting our school started again. That's often going to be a committee of the whole, but for the meetings, we have Noreen, Maria, and Dan. And I want to thank everybody for, especially on the ad hoc committees, for those who volunteered. That was just volunteering to do extra work, and I really appreciate all that. So with that being said, I would like there to, and just to give a little background on this, it is normally that committees do not have to be approved. It's typically just that the president says what the committees are. But 2 years ago, I felt it was very important that there's buy-in from everybody on the board about committee assignments. So we actually changed the bylaws to make it so that it requires majority support. So I think I've gotten a lot of your feedback, and I assume you're all going to support it. So with that being said, is there a motion on the committees list?
Motion to approve the committee list.
Thank you, Maria. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Dan. Rashawn? I don't see any discussion, so Rashawn, roll call, please.
Mrs. Albanese,
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus, Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Melman,
Yes.
Mr. Park,
Yes.
Mr. Phelan,
Yes.
Mrs. Rakow. Is that it?
You're
Yes.
muted.
Got it.
Thumbs up.
Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wild is not present. The ayes have it. Motion's been approved.
Okay. Thank you very much, everybody. The only committee that I believe met was actually the Finance Committee, and and just to give a brief update, what we discussed was everything you've seen today. I'm just trying to think. I just want to make sure that there wasn't anything that I missed here. I'm just looking at my notes here just to make sure that I didn't miss anything for this report. Okay. Given the time, we'll move
It was
on.
just mostly the order.
Yeah, it was mostly just the audit. What we're going to do next, just from finance and planning perspective, the budget's obviously coming up quickly, and we'll obviously be looking at the planning portion of our committee. As I said, we join them. So the tech portion is going to be very important as well. Oh, and I forgot to mention in board comments that I wanted to mention now. So our board, I've signed, these things go quickly, they run quickly. So I signed us up, and I want to let the public know, because they're also invited, because they're public meetings, to board trainings. One is one that we've done before, or two of them we've done before. It's an ethics and goals training. The goal setting meeting is going to be on March 16th. That's the only addition to the calendar. And this is going to need approval as well. The others are March 9th, which is already a meeting. It's going to be just like we did with the auditor's report. It's going to be an ethics training. And what it is the NJSBA is a group that we belong to. It's an association we belong to, and they provide free trainings for us as part of our membership. And what these ethics trainings do is they teach board members the role of the board. It's very beneficial for boards. It was beneficial for us in the past, and we do it every so often. And I think with such a new board, it's very important to do. And also it's good for old board members as well. It's always good to refresh, and I always learn something new every single time. And it's wonderful. Something interesting though that we also will be doing is that as part of our diversity committee, I felt it was very important that this board sets an example and takes a diversity training course. So we've been signed up for a diversity training course that'll be on March 23rd. I actually made a mistake in an email today to our diversity committee. I thought it was on a different date. It's March 23rd, which will be at the beginning of a board meeting. So we don't have to add actually a date for that, which is good for everybody's calendar, I suppose. But this will be the first time that our committee does this, that our board does this, and I hope it goes well and that we can continue to expand our education, so that way when we make decisions about our community, we're making them going and knowing more than we know now, and I hope that we can continue those things. One thing that I'd like this board to do, that I know some boards do, is they go for credits from the NJSBA. It's just more training things that build up their ranking in the NJSBA. It's really meaningless for the public, but in reality, it actually educates board members on how we do our jobs, and it'll lead to a better board operation, a better school district, and better outcomes for taxpayers. Yeah, and I should highlight, Mary goes to a lot of them, so Mary could tell us they're great. and as a result, Mary, has it made you a better board member, you feel?
Well, I did rack up a lot of board credit points, and I have that little certificate that they sent me congratulating me.
You're a master board member, right? Are you a master board member yet?
Not quite. I'm like 3 credits short or something like that. But it's a really,
That's good.
yeah. The New Jersey School Boards is really a wonderful resource for all kinds of information. So with the workshops, I had asked Rasham today if he could probably get access for the newest board members to attend some of those. They're all virtual. They're all online, and they're supposed to be accessible for up to a year. So if they can look and peruse some of the workshops that were offered, there were ones on diversity, which I found really excellent when I attended them. There's things on ethics, there's things on law, there's all kinds of great workshops. So if you can get access to it, I recommend you listen to some.
Thank you so much, Mary. And testimony from the person who really digs the deepest into the NJSBA. They're very good about that. So. Okay, so actually, can I have a motion to add the March 16th date? I heard back from most of you that it worked, so that was one reason I went forward with it, and also they fill up very quickly. And that'll be for goal setting, and we will have discussion about that before the meeting, so that way we don't just start the meeting and no one has a goal to set. There will be planning before that and emails that will go out before that.
March 16th education.
Yeah, so it would be adding March 16th. What it would be is it would be a public meeting that we would advertise. But what we'd be saying is that there's going to be no public action taken during this meeting. So we open the meeting, we start the training, we close the meeting. That's it. There's no voting. There's no action items taken.
So it's 119-10E.
Yes. Yeah.
21.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And I guess everything gets okay.
All right, could you repeat the date again?
March 16th, and it will be at regular board time. It's a Tuesday. It's at 7:30 p.m. Regular board time. So is there a motion to amend our calendar so that way we can get that advertised and goal setting?
Motion.
Isaac, thank you. Is there a second? Christina, thank you. Any discussion on it? Okay, Rashawn, roll call, please.
Mrs. Albanese,
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Melman,
Yes.
Mr. Park,
Yes.
Mr. Phelan,
Yes.
Mrs. Rakow, Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiles not present. The ayes have it. The motion has been approved.
Thank you so much. All right, next up, we will move on to our education items as listed on the agenda. Just so everyone knows, when I say that, what I mean is the agenda is what we've done in the last 2 years is in a step of transparency and public involvement is what you guys see, and when I say you guys, what the public sees on the agenda is exactly what the board members see in terms of what's written on the agenda. So when I say as written, it is as written as given to the public. So is there a motion on education items as written? Kim, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Anna. Any questions or discussion? Education items? Okay, seeing none. Rashawn? Thank you.
Mrs. Albanese,
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Melman,
Yes.
Mr. Park,
Yes.
Mr. Phelan,
Yes.
Mrs. Rakow. She said, yeah, Miss, I can't hear you. You can give me a abstain.
Yeah, I don't know how you would say that without the microphone. Oh, her microphone's not.
Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson.
Yes.
All right, Mrs. Wiles not present. The ayes have it. The education items have been approved.
Okay, great. Next, we'll move on to finance as written. I'll discuss a few things, but first we need a motion and a second. Is there a motion?
Motion.
Maria, second. Isaac, I saw you put your hand up. Isaac. So just to discuss a few items, just so that the public knows, and there's just some information on it. We're just looking at it here. So as I already mentioned for 11F, the comprehensive maintenance plan, this is really a starting point. It fulfills requirements from the county. Every year there's an investment minimum that has to go in for each building based on square footage. So we submit this to the county to show that we are investing in the buildings, but the actual plan that's going to be really important for budget purposes is still going to be developed. This is, like I said, this is like the starting point. Regarding 11G, the Ford Expedition, I think that's 11G, right?
Yes, yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
So Kevin is saving the district money again. I just want to give a little background on it, and then if there's questions, perhaps Kevin can speak to it. But essentially, Westwood had a leaf device, I don't know, blower or whatever, but they don't make it anymore. It's very expensive, and to fix it, or to buy a new one would have been something like $25,000. We have a mechanic on staff because Kevin made a very wise decision for this district financially to hire people with licenses. So we have a licensed mechanic on staff. He fixed their blower thing that would have cost them $25,000. And in return, we got a truck that they were not using because their town had a military surplus vehicle that they acquired from I guess, either the National Guard or the federal government. So they had this truck sitting there. The mechanic looked it over, and now it's going to be used for delivering food for our digital students and then possibly mail runs. Kevin, if I missed anything on that, please feel free to chime in case there's any questions. And that's all the items that I kind of blocked off for for information. Is there any other questions, comments on finance items?
There's a new business one too.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm sorry, I don't have that.
It's there here.
Oh.
It says, I think it's right there. Near the bottom.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, but I don't think it's gonna have any questions about this there. It's just
Okay, and for board members, there is a new business item.
It's on the agenda.
It's on the public agenda?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so then it says written.
I believe so.
It's with information received from the, just in case.
It's not on the public.
Okay, so I'll just read it.
It's on the worksheet.
Okay, so then this will be 11I. It's with information received from the business administrator, move to approve the second quarter unemployment charges totaling $20,806.27 using the district's unemployment account. Okay. Okay, can you just speak to it a little bit? Or Rashawn, can you just speak to it a little bit? I'm just so, because this is a new business item, so I just want to make sure everyone understands what it is.
Yeah. So this actually goes, I want to just highlight, this is one of the items that in previous audit, I think was identified by an auditing firm and the findings that in previous years have been paid by the business office or by the district, but had not been placed on the bills list for approval. So again, this is one of those actions that we're already taking. We received the second quarter unemployment charges that actually totaled over $40,000. However, we are only obligated to pay $20,806.27 because the government is actually picking up the other portion of our unemployment bill as a part of COVID relief that's being provided nationwide. So we're actually, we're saving quite a few dollars here, but this is an unemployment charge that we have to pay for former employees who applied for unemployment during the pandemic.
Okay, thank you so much for that explanation. Is there any other comments, questions? If not, oh, Kim, yes.
I had a couple questions about the comprehensive maintenance plan, but should I email those to maybe Rashawn or whoever?
Yeah, you can feel free. You could email, yeah, sure, feel free. Rashawn, email any of them. That's fine.
Okay. You said it's kind of a document in process, so we're not.
Yeah, what it's really is it's going to be like that was the document that was submitted because those are projects that will probably be on it. Some of them, if you look at the previous long-range facility plan, a lot of these items are actually on that. And what happens is we can't obviously do all of them every year. It'd be very expensive. So it's pretty much a wish list of items. And the items that we don't fulfill this year get pushed off to the next year. We have to prioritize them. And oftentimes, for example, like technology upgrades is a new one, and that's, you know, very important. So that gets pushed above, say, I'm just not, you know, putting any thought into this right now, but like locker replacement, right? So locker replacement might get knocked down to the next year. And then if something else more important comes up, then maybe locker replacement gets pushed off another year. I will say, however, the high school needs locker replacement. Those are gross. They've been there for a long time. But anyways, yeah, so what's going to happen is the Finance and Planning Committee will spend a lot of time on this document and then send it to the board well in advance of the actual budget being voted on as a proposal. The board will discuss it and then approve eventually this as part of the budget. And then this document will serve, like what's approved will serve as the starting point for next year's comprehensive maintenance plan. I hope that answered the question.
Thank you.
Yep.
And could I add something on that, Bryce? I just wanted to provide clarification. Approval of the comprehensive maintenance plan tonight is not a commitment from the board on the spending. You're gonna see when you look in the documents, as Bryce mentioned, we are required by law to spend a minimum amount to maintain the current state of our facilities. That is calculated in the document, and I, as the business administrator, I'm required to submit these documents to the Department of Education to be in compliance. The comprehensive maintenance plan that lists the projects, that's again a wish list, and the board would formally approve any of those projects during the actual adoption of the budget. That's where we would include that. So tonight doesn't mean that you're saying yes to us approving it. It's more of you approving the fact that I fulfilled my obligation to submit this plan to the Department of Education as required by law.
That's a very important detail that I left out. That this is not obligating us in any way to spending this money on these projects. Thank you for adding that. That was a big detail I left out there. Are there any other questions on anything? Otherwise, okay, seeing none. Rashawn, roll call, please.
Mrs. Albanese,
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Melvin,
Yes.
Mr. Park,
Yes.
Mr. Phelan. I think that's a yes.
Yes.
Mrs. Rakow, abstention. Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
No.
Mrs. Wild not present. All right, the ayes have it. Motion carries. Finance items have been approved.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so next we're at policy, and there's just two changes to make. Vic, I just want to make sure I'm doing this procedurally correctly. So I'm going to pull one and we're going to amend one. If we don't make a motion now, then can I just put forward an amended motion? Is that procedurally correct?
Say that one more time.
Sorry, I know. I'm sorry. I want to make sure I get this right. So, as written, one of them I would like to pull, and another one I want to add. There's one word missing in the actual policy that is supposed to be in there, so I want to amend it.
Okay. Well, we don't
Put forward an amended policy.
So we don't even have to, as long as everyone is okay with putting forth the policy with the missing word, just do that when you move it, right? So you don't have to move it and then amend it.
That's what I was hoping.
Yeah, you can just move it, and then if nobody moves on the one that you're going to take off for now, then it's not even being considered, right? So
great. So then I would like to pull the religion in schools policy. It was uploaded to your docket actually incorrectly, and I think that the policy committee should have the opportunity still to discuss it, just because it was a source of a bit of debate, and I think that because of the clerical error, I think it should be discussed. So I'd like that pulled. And then under the health and physical education policy amendments, first off, publicly, I'd like to thank Jamie Sclafane and Vicky Lebo for their assistance on the verbiage, making it a modern day policy. And second, there was a word missing that I sent to you a corrected copy of. So in the internal president's report that I sent out in blue, the word harassment was left out of this version and added to that version. So the corrected version just adds harassment to the education of students in the health curriculum. So, yeah, I'll just read the sentence here if I can find it. Let's see. Okay, it would be, where is it? Okay, so sexual assault prevention, NJSA 18A:35-4.3 requires the development of sexual assault prevention programs. Some of this, by the way, I just want to mention, some of this is the required words of the state, and then some of it is modified as amended language. This is an amended policy. So it requires the development of a sexual assault prevention program by the Commissioner of Education for the utilization by school districts. And the Leonia School District will establish additional curriculum guidelines and educational programming on sexual assault and harassment, that's the addition, prevention for grades 5 to 12 with an emphasis on recognizing and preventing sexual assault and harassment. Again, I added harassment back in, and age-appropriate lessons on consent for grades 2 to 12. And then I guess why not read the other one just so that the public has it. Well, actually, this one is unchanged, but I'll read it anyway. In addition to the sexually explicit images through electronic means, NJSA 18A:35-4.32 and 4.33. The Leonia Board of Education policy requires the development of curriculum guidelines and educational programming for grades 5 to 12 on the social, emotional, physical, and mental health and legal consequences of smartphone, computer, and internet use, with an emphasis on distribution of sexually explicit images, unhealthy messages through electronic means, and addiction to social media and internet pornography. Those are the updated policies. So with the addition of the word harassment in those two locations, and then pulling religion in schools policy for further discussion amongst the policy committee, is there a motion on that? And then if there's any discussion, we can have that. Is there a motion from a board member? Someone?
Motion.
Mary, second. Isaac, your hand's still up, so I'll take you for the second. Is there any discussion on anything? Mary, yeah.
I saw in the margins on the opioid antidote policy, there were a lot of, there were some yellow highlights and there were some questions in the margins. I don't know if you want to pull that so that the policy committee can talk about that, or do you feel that those were resolved already?
Yeah, I sent those, Mary, to Linda Bernard, who leads our nurses, and I asked her for to confirm this information, and she sent it back to me fine. So the document that we hear has been approved by the nurses in town, in our district.
So Linda Bernard, the nurse, and Dr. Yankoff, they were both okay with the wording of this policy?
Yes, and the other two nurses also.
And the other two nurses, okay. All right, so then it doesn't need to be pulled unless somebody else on the board disagrees.
And I just want to ask, because I remember when we first joined the board, Mary, actually, there was a policy on Narcan distribution. Is this just like an amendment, like an updated version of that?
Well, Strauss Esme, the company, does updates when there's any kind of regulation changes, and they provide most districts in the state with the information, and then we update it.
Okay, no, I was just curious because I was like,
Vic,
I remember this.
Yeah, Vic, you might just, I don't know how many schools do Strauss Esme, but in most schools that you work with, right?
Yeah, I would say it's probably the vast majority. Some of them still use New Jersey school boards, which also provides policy, but I would say probably, my guess is at least 2/3, if not more, use Strauss Esme.
Okay.
And we've
I
been
have one other comment.
Sorry.
Mary, yeah.
Yeah, sorry, one other comment about the immunization policy. So I don't remember seeing it in the original version, but there is a notation about in an emergency situation where they could require a vaccine or a vaccination to alleviate, the pandemic. I'm guessing that's why this one is being put forth. Is the district or the state thinking about making the vaccine for COVID mandatory for students, do you think?
I haven't heard
I've not heard that, Mary. And again, last year, if you recall, during the summer, the state was trying to push through mandatory vaccinations, and the different groups that opposed it was able to defeat the bill by 1 vote. So at this point, I would not think so. That might come up for vote again by the Assembly, the state Senate. If it passes, then that would be discussion at that point. But right now, because of religious exemption, you do not need to have vaccinations.
I am going to be attending a legislative update tomorrow at 11 o'clock. So if I hear anything, I'll let you know.
Very good. Yeah, thank you.
Sounds good.
It was a battle last summer, though, on before the pandemic, on vaccinations in general.
Yeah.
Isaac.
Yes, on the similar thing at the same title, that I know that these are all based on like the NJSA, but I'm like, I was wondering that in the number 9, there's a drugs, alcohol, tobacco, control the dangerous substance and all that. Are we supposed to like better amend the like vapes as well?
I think that I would assume that that's incorporated in the policy, but as I recall, there is actually a separate policy on vaping, is there not?
It does? Okay.
At this, no, I remember us talking about their passing.
Yeah,
like
I think we included that in.
I know, because I remember
somewhere along the line we did.
This is what I remember, and I'll look into it, and if not, we can change it. But I remember maybe like a year or two ago, we amended the tobacco policy and treated vaping as if it's cigarettes.
Yeah, that's
I remember that. So I guess when you see tobacco, you can kind of in your head include vapes, but perhaps we
I
could.
think it says it in there now.
Oh,
yeah, I'm pretty sure. So, because vaping was the big issue last year before the pandemic. So I'll double check with Diane to go over that, but I'll report next meeting.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a good point. You're right.
Yeah, I just have that memory.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments or concerns? Okay. If not, is there a motion on policy? Or sorry, we already had that. Roll call, please.
Yep. Mrs. Albanese?
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Melman?
Yes.
Mr. Park?
Yes.
Mr. Phelan? Mr. Phelan?
No.
Yes or no?
No.
No. All right. Mrs. Rakow? Yes, thumbs up. Mr. Robbins?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Mrs. Wiles not present. Motion carries.
Okay, great. Next there's one item left of new business.
Yes,
Which is personnel item, right?
yeah, it's the personnel for Grace's maternity leave. We did the first one already.
Oh, okay.
It's the second one.
Okay. This was sent out, to everybody, right?
Yes.
Okay, so then
But it's not in the agenda. So we want to.
you read this.
Okay. All right.
I
It's
got
just that we have one of our staff members going on maternity leave. We tried to find a full-time replacement, but we were unable to do that. So in the past, as you may know, we have asked teachers to cover. Teachers have to agree to that. And 5 teachers in the middle school have agreed to cover the maternity leave replacement. They'll receive half a stipend for it since it's half the year. And the teachers that are accepting is Anthony Manzoni, Gianna Camella, Blythe Lanewell, Laura O'Mara, and Christina Capuano for Grace Chung's maternity leave, which will begin on February the 1st.
Okay. Is there a motion on the new business items or item? Someone?
Motion.
Motion, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Anna. Any discussion? No? Okay, Rashawn, roll call, please.
Mrs. Albanese?
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mrs. Melvin?
Yes.
Mr. Park?
Yes.
Mr. Phelan?
Yes.
Mrs. Rakow? Yes. Mr. Robbins?
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson?
Yes.
Thank you. Mrs. Wiles not present. Motion carries. Personnel items have been approved. And just so we're cleared out, we were voting for, were you just voting on the new business item, Mr. Robbins, or was that a motion you called for personnel, including the new business item?
Well, just the new business.
It was just the new business item with the personnel item, or not personnel, but it was the personnel item in new business.
Got it. Okay.
Thank you. Okay, we are now at the second and final public comment portion of the meeting. It can be on agenda items or non-agenda items. It's up to you. We have 2 minutes and 30 seconds for this portion. Is there a motion to take us into public comment? Someone?
Moved.
Moved by Mary. Is there a second?
Second.
Second, Maria. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. We will start. Give me just 1 second. Okay. First hand up is Arthur. Welcome back. Floor is yours.
I forgot, just one item I'd forgotten during my previous comments, the same issue. It's regarding, in this particular case, it's regarding $400,000 expenditure at ACS that's during this fiscal year. I'm not sure if it was done yet, if it has to be done, or it's in progress. The man traps and office renovations. How many man traps where? Obviously not putting them all at every single entrance, and at least I don't think you are. And what offices are being renovated and what are they doing?
Thank you very much. Okay, and then next is Pilar. You should be able to speak now.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay, hi. So previously, Eli brought up that we made a survey for the students regarding the schedule that is to start in February. We brought up our concerns because a lot of the students felt that the schedule was overwhelming and overall it didn't really help us with the increase in workload and would increase like stress from the current situation we are in.
I'm sorry?
Sorry. Yeah, that's all. No, that's not all. I'm sorry. We feel that it might be helpful to see classes more frequently, but 3 classes a day is is we need more than every 3 days. So we need to see our classes. We need to see our classes more frequently than every 3 days because we would have too much homework and it would just be much more stressful overall. That's all.
Okay. Thank you so much, and thank you as a student for speaking up. It's always wonderful when students come to board meetings and speak up and engage in their local government bodies. So thank you very much for taking the time this evening away from your school schedule to be with us and to speak on that item. I much appreciate it. And the education committee, I suppose, will look into it soon. Okay, next I see is Tommy, you should be able to speak now. Wait, hang on. There we go. You should be able to speak now.
Yeah, hi. I just wanted to share my comment. It is still a very difficult time, but I'm really glad that I listened in today. I see so much enthusiasm and great hard works, which is very encouraging. And I also, was, very impressed by what Eli shared, how students are, they're enthusiastic to share their thoughts. Even, sorry, I didn't get her name. The student who just spoke up, I know it takes a lot of courage. So it is really encouraging tonight for some reason. And I also see the website has been reorganized. And I also see there are some placeholders to add more information to it. And I have to tell you, I mean, to me, it's a lot more user-friendly, very easy to navigate. Not criticizing the previous platform, but I see the improvement in many different places. And I'm glad to see we are continuing to have great board members with the 3 new additions. I mean, I'm really very encouraged tonight. I just wanted to share that. I just wanted to thank you all and hope that we continue to stay enthusiastic and make the best out of this still very difficult year. Thank you all. That's all.
Thank you so much. A lovely comment. Thank you. And thank you for the compliment on the website. It is looking good, I know. And thank you, Mary, and the communications committee for all the feedback. There's one I have to just mention publicly. One of the links that was put in, I don't know how you caught it, Dan, but you saw that learn had 1 letter off in the link. And if Dan can find that the link had 1 letter off, I know that the budget is going to be in good hands, because that was just, I was like, holy crap, how did he find that? So
just to reinforce, Bryce doesn't want to take full credit here, but he deserves full credit for updating the website. He spent a lot of time. He starts school again on Tuesday, which I'm kind of happy for, or Wednesday, but he's done a lot of work in between sessions to get the website back up. So he's not taking credit for it, but he should.
Much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Bryce.
Thank you, Mary. All right. Thank you all. And let's see. Where am I on the agenda? Okay. Are we? Yes. There's no. Oh no. There's one more public comment. Kingsley, you should be able to speak now.
Thank you. I just wanted to mention a few things. First of all, Rashawn, I thought your presentation was fantastic, and I appreciate that kind of detailed work. And also the anti-racism training that was described for the staff development day or whatever sounds fantastic. And regarding the new schedule at LHS, I just wanted to speak in strong support of that. And I think the more we can move to cycling through more and more classes per day, the better the students, that serves the students better, in my opinion. And the last thing is that if it is allowed to mandate COVID vaccine, when it becomes available, I think we should do it to whatever extent possible. I mean, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Seeing no other members of the public with their hand raised. Is there a motion to take us back into the regular session of the meeting?
Motion.
Motion, Maria, is there a second?
Second.
Second, Michael. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, any abstentions? Okay, great. We're back into the regular portion of the meeting. Rashawn, I don't mean to put you on the spot. If you wanted to answer the $400,000 question about ACS, just real quickly regarding the man traps and things like that, those have been on the security committee's wish list for a long time, and the security committee will, I imagine, meet a lot this year and have that as a discussion and a recommendation then to the finance committee, and then we'll look at the budget, make priorities, send it back, and go forth with it.
Same with the renovations at ACS.
Yeah. Same with the renovations at ACS. Nothing has been done. One of the plans was to fix up the main office to make it not only a bit more secure in the form of having, you don't have to walk into the building to get into the office, but also just improving the office, expanding the actual size of the principal's office. I don't know if anyone's been Maria Martinez's office, but it is quite small. For a principal to even have parents or students inside of it is challenging, and certainly needs a bit of renovation. But the main emphasis is security on that front. But nothing's been expended on nothing has been spent on that, and it was just a planning protocol. But Rashawn, I don't know if you wanted to, if there's anything further on that $400,000 or.
Yes. So the district has not made any investments in that particular area for man traps, and we are Kevin and his team are working to incorporate some office renovations. The man traps were added to the grant application that we submitted for Alyssa's Law. We haven't heard back on the status of the grant at this point in time. So if that is approved, the man traps will be covered under that particular grant. I wanted to point out about these plans that are put together for comprehensive maintenance. Sometimes they are, in my experience, they have not been put together with true fidelity. And I just want to highlight that when we look at this, I'm sure the numbers kind of jump out at the page when you look at $400,000 to be invested in man traps and office renovations throughout the district. If we think about the budget cycle for last year, the district didn't even have $580,000 available to allocate towards the completion of such an expensive comprehensive maintenance plan. So again, sometimes these wish lists are in fact the things that the district facilities team wish to actually have or incorporate and execute for the district, but it has to be married with the sound financial plan. So if you look at the wish list for next school year, I think it totals about $350,000. That is the same amount that our auditors, very close to the $350,000 mark, that our auditors told us we have available in our maintenance reserve accounts. That projection and those estimates, they are intentional. So for fiscal year 21-22, when we get into that conversation, these estimates were done, this plan was done with fidelity, also understanding that we would in fact have the financial resources available to support us executing these projects if we make a withdrawal from our maintenance reserve account, which, as we learned earlier, has the available funds we need. So just wanted to highlight that. None of those, we're not spending $400,000 this year on man traps and office renovations at ACS.
Much appreciated. Okay. I don't think we need a closed session tonight. We don't have anything for closed session tonight, so we can just go right to personnel. As written, it'd be 17A through 17G. Is there a motion on personnel items? Someone? Anybody?
Motion.
Thank you. Is there a second? Maria, there we go. Okay, great. Guys, if you raise your hand, I'll acknowledge it, I promise. Okay, it's no discussion, I assume. That's a personnel item, can anyways. Okay, Rashawn, take it away.
Mrs. Albanese,
Yes.
Mrs. De Jesus, Mrs. De Jesus,
Yes.
Mr. Lee,
Yes.
Mrs. Melman,
Yes.
Mr. Park,
Yes.
Mr. Phelan,
Yes.
Mrs. Rakow. Abstain. Mr. Robbins,
Yes.
Mrs. Thompson,
Yes.
Mrs. Wiles not present. The ayes have it. Personnel items have been approved.
Okay, great. And that's it. Is there a motion to adjourn? Someone?
Motion to adjourn.
Oh, now it's quick. Now no one waits.
Second.
Maria, and then I think I saw Anna second. Is that
Yes.
correct? Okay, great. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, wonderful. The meeting is officially over at 10:27 p.m. Thank you very much, everyone, for coming, and we will see you all next time. Have a great evening, everyone.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you, everyone.
Everyone.